Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers. This is the Puma MagMax Nitro, and this is the Asics Superblast 2. Two max cushion shoes that definitely have a more up-tempo edge to them. But if you had to pick one, or if we had to pick one, which one would we go for? This is our multi-tester take on whether you should go for the Puma MagMax Nitro or the Asics Superblast 2. So here's the key things you need to know about the Asics Superblast 2 and the Puma MagMax Nitro. So these are two max stacked plateless shoes, with the MagMax coming in cheaper than the Superblast 2, though both aren't super cheap options. Weight-wise, the Superblast 2 is the lighter of the two, with both offering the same drop and similar stack heights. There's mesh at the upper for both, with Asics using a combination of cushioning technologies, while Puma opts for a big stack of its Nitro foam to promise a bouncy and lively ride. At the outsole, Puma uses one of its Puma Grip outsole designs, with Asics employing its AHA plus hybrid one to make sure it grips strong and gives you good life for longer runs.
So I haven't actually got the Superblast 2 on me at the moment. Mike's borrowed mine a long time ago and I've still not got it back. So I won't be holding that up here. But the fit for me in the Puma MagMax Nitro, very comfortable. Plenty of space for me in the forefoot and around the sides of the forefoot. I think there's plenty of padding on here as well. The only bit I'm not too keen on is the tongue section. It's a little bit stretchy. I do find it a little bit harder to get a lockdown fit in it, but it's fine. Once I've worked it out, it's absolutely fine. So it's a small problem to bring up. I think it's a very comfortable shoe overall, and I've had no major issues with this shoe. So I'd definitely stick to my size 8 in the UK. And the Superblast 2, equally a very, very comfortable shoe. Quite a long shoe, so there's definitely plenty of space in the forefoot of that shoe. I've had no issues at all with the fit for me. I found it very comfortable, very easy to get a good lockdown fit in, and would definitely stay to my size in the Superblast 2.
In terms of fit, I would say it has been very good overall in both of these shoes. I've had no real issues to report here in terms of my running time. I've got them both in a UK size 8. That is my typical running shoe size. Now with Puma shoes, I can be a bit indifferent in terms of the sizing, particularly with its newer shoes, but with the MagMax Nitro, it's fit absolutely fine for me. Asics is a bit more consistent, and yeah, I would say going true to size on both these shoes, for me, based on my experience, should be good for most people. What I would say is, in terms of those fits, I would say the MagMax Nitro is definitely the roomier of the two shoes, definitely feels a little bit broader, whereas the Superblast 2 is definitely more on the narrow side, but they're both kind of well padded in general, very roomy in those toe boxes, giving you ample amount of space if you want to do long runs in these shoes. I would say the midfoot hold is a little bit more narrow on the Superblast 2, or just kind of locks in a little bit more than the MagMax Nitro, but it's not an issue on the MagMax Nitro. And when you get back further, kind of the tongue and the laces, you're getting more padding in general in the MagMax Nitro, kind of lacing and tongue, which is a little bit on the stretchier side, whereas you're getting a skinnier one on the Superblast 2, a more traditional lacing on the Superblast 2 as well too. In terms of heel collars, similar level of padding. It's a similar formation in terms of those heel counters as well too. It's a little bit flatter on the MagMax Nitro and slightly narrower on the Superblast 2, but it's not a huge amount in it. So yeah, for me, my experience going true to size has been absolutely fine. I would say the MagMax Nitro is the more broader, kind of wider fitting shoe, whereas the Superblast 2 is a little bit more on the narrow side. So that's maybe something to factor in when choosing between the two.
So when it comes to the fit of the two shoes, I've got a UK 9 for both, which is a US 10 with both of these brands. That is the size I generally go for with Asics and Puma, and they both fit me very well in terms of length. Got enough room in the toe box, but not too much room. Good hold around the midfoot. No concerns at all with the fit of the Asics, I would say in general. The MagMax, I have had a problem with it irritating my Achilles. I don't think this is going to be a widespread problem. I think it's quite peculiar to my particular Achilles tendonitis, some kind of nodule that I think gets rubbed. I don't really know why. Normally I can tell with shoes that do it. There's like a little bit of foam that some brands put cushioning on the inside, and I think I can feel it a little bit in the MagMax, but in general it's quite a flexible heel counter. But yeah, it does irritate my Achilles. It's something I noticed throughout testing, but overall in terms of sizing, I would say that both of these shoes fit well in my normal size, and I would stick to your normal running shoe size. So moving on to the run test, you've got two big shoes here with big stacks of cushioning, but you've got two very different shoes with very different rides, I would say. The Asics Superblast has kind of set the tone with what these max stack plateless trainers can be. It's got that incredible ride that's very versatile. It's comfortable for easy runs, but it's quite stiff and bouncy and responsive and fast when you do want to move at faster paces. It's a shoe that's now very well established as one of the ultimate all-rounders. And I think a lot of brands are trying to get in on that act, but I would say that none of them have really nailed it in the way that Asics has with this shoe. So used it for a variety of runs. I think I enjoy it most for kind of long runs, tempo runs, longer sessions with kind of extended reps rather than anything too flat out fast. I think when it comes to really fast paces, I'd rather be in a more nimble shoe myself, because although it is a light shoe, it is quite a big shoe, and I do feel like it's better at kind of cruising paces, kind of moving through the gears, soaking up a lot of miles. It feels very good. You can go and do all out stuff in it as well, but it doesn't feel so good for that for me. And the other end of the scale, when it comes to easy runs, I think it's a pretty good easy run shoe. I quite like doing them in it, but some people might find it a little bit stiff for that. I think it really has a sweet spot for me of those kind of long runs with faster sections, longer sessions, tempo runs, that kind of thing, where it just really comes into its own. It feels very good underfoot whilst also being very versatile. So the MagMax is, I don't know if it is Puma's attempt at a Superblast. Not exactly sure how I'd place this shoe. For me, it's a shoe that I've really only found useful for easy runs. It's not a shoe that I would really consider one that's particularly versatile. Like, I found it only really good at easy paces, and a bit too heavy and sluggish to move through the gears in. And it's got a ride that I can feel is bouncy, but I don't really unlock a lot of the bounce. And I think it's a shoe that in general just doesn't really get on with my gait pattern. I think maybe if you are bounding more, you're a heavier runner, you're putting a bit more force in, you might get a bit more out of this foam. But as a high cadence runner, I'm not that lightweight, but I'm reasonably lightweight. I don't think I'm necessarily putting enough into this midsole to get a load out of it. So I kind of just end up with a really big shoe on my foot that's quite heavy, and this doesn't really turn over that well for me. And that's the other thing with it. The ride just hasn't really clicked for me at all. Like, I just always feel a bit sluggish in the shoe, and that's on easy runs, and then I certainly find that if I'm going to try and move to faster paces in it. So yeah, all round, it's not a shoe that I found particularly versatile. I think it could be quite a fun shoe if you do get more bounce out of this foam, and that might make it a bit more versatile as well. But for me, yeah, it wasn't a shoe that really clicked for me, and I would firmly position it as a shoe that's just there for eating up easy mileage, whereas the Superblast is certainly a more versatile option. It can do all those easy miles whilst also having a lot more response and a lighter, faster feeling if you are going to try and do faster runs.
Okay, so these are two shoes that are both high stack shoes. They're both designed seemingly for a very similar purpose, but in reality, I think there's a big difference between the Superblast 2 and the MagMax Nitro. There are a lot of max stack shoes coming out at the moment, and for most people, they probably look like they're trying to do the same thing. I think that's the difference really comes down to the foams and the rockers and all those sorts of things, where there's some max stack shoes which are really just designed for easy days, and you're only going to use them for comfort and just ticking off the miles, and maybe consistent longer efforts where you just want something really solid and comfortable and just has a nice smooth ride to it. So I think that is what the MagMax Nitro is. It's clearly got a big stack of cushioning in it. It's a very comfortable shoe to wear. I think there's a little bit of energy return in this shoe, not loads, but it's definitely the sort of energy return which makes a run more enjoyable. But I wouldn't say it's a shoe that's massively designed to be versatile. I think it's definitely a shoe that is a little bit more versatile than some of the max stack shoes out there at the moment. But for me, it's a shoe that still sits firmly in that world of easier days, recovery days, and just ticking off the miles. So I've done about 70k in the shoe so far. That has varied across recovery runs of 7 to 10k. It has included longer efforts, so over 20k, and it has included an interval session as well. So the recovery runs, fantastic, really, really enjoyable, easy runs, just very comfortable, nice little bit of bounce in it. The sort of shoe that if you've got to go and tick off some miles and you just want to stick a podcast on and just enjoy your run, really, really good for that. Really, really does the job and just makes you feel like you're minimizing any impact, and it just rolls you along nicely and gives you a little bit of bounce. When you're doing longer sessions in it, equally, very good, very good. If you're doing it at a nice, comfortable pace. So for me, a comfortable pace is 5 to 5 minute 20 minute kilometers. And for those, absolutely great. I think it's a lovely shoe for that. You could definitely just clock along, enjoying it, and you get home and you feel like your legs are nice and fresh. Interval sessions, it's a bit of a clunky shoe. It's not a shoe that I would pick up for running fast. If I'm running at my 5k pace or 10k pace, I would struggle in this shoe. It's not the worst max stack shoe for doing that, but it's definitely not a shoe that's designed for that. It's definitely designed more for that sort of slower cruising, those slower cruising runs, as opposed to trying to pick up the pace and slow down and run as fast as you can. The Superblast 2, I think, is a shoe that actually veers more towards the speed side of things. So despite the fact that it's got a really big stack, I think the midsole foam in that is a little bit more responsive. It's not as soft as what you get in the MagMax Nitro. And the way that the transition works in the Superblast 2 is just really conducive to running at a faster pace for a longer time. I don't think it's a shoe that you'd use for really fast interval sessions. But for me, when I'm doing marathon training plans and I am doing a lot of tempo blocks within my long runs, so tomorrow I've got a 2.5 hour run, and the bulk of that is going to be running at a nice consistent pace, which will be about 5 minute kilometers, and then I've got to break it down to my marathon pace, which will be about 4-minute 10, 4-minute 5 kilometers. For a run like that, the Superblast 2 works really well, because it just does the job on an easy run, but when you need to pick up the pace and run that consistent, speedier pace, it's a really good shoe for that. It just sort of clocks you along nicely. It just feels really smooth. There's a nice bit of responsiveness in it, and there's a nice bit of turnover in it as well. It's not bad in the MagMax Nitro, but it's just not getting up to that speed and maintaining it isn't as nice in the MagMax Nitro. It just feels like there's more on your foot, and it's a little bit more sluggish than what I'd want for a shoe that I'm going to be running my marathon pace in. Other things I would say about both of the shoes is that they have there's a really good outsole on the MagMax. I'd actually say it's far superior outsole on the MagMax Nitro to what's on the Superblast 2. It's Puma. The outsole is always fantastic. I've used this on a lot of traily areas. I've been running a lot around public footpaths and things. It's quite muddy. It's quite dirty at the moment on the ground. There's a lot of leaves and stuff on there. So this outsole is fantastic. It's brilliant grip on it. And I mean, the shoe's getting quite dirty now anyway, because I've been doing it quite a lot on those public footpaths. But it's a great shoe for that. It's a really solid outsole. Superblast outsole is fine. But I wouldn't say it's as hard wearing and as grippy as the outsole on the MagMax Nitro.
So in terms of my running time with these two shoes, what I would say first and foremost is that these are shoes that are very easy to kind of very quickly clock up mileage in. I think that's, what I've kind of found in my time. I've done kind of over 50 miles in the MagMax Nitro. I've done kind of 60 miles in the Superblast 2 so far. Given that we've got so many other shoes to test, these are shoes that I've managed to do that with, and I think ultimately these do really fit in that kind of max cushion super trainer category. In terms of how they do it all, I think they do it slightly differently. I think one of the crucial areas for me here is the difference in the weights. Now, the Superblast 2 is the lighter of the two shoes. This is kind of more kind of daily trainer style weights, where the Puma MagMax Nitro is a bit more in keeping with the max cushion shoes that we've seen. Now, while it is the heavier, it doesn't, feel overly heavy, doesn't, run heavy as well. So, while it has had that added weight over the Superblast 2, I don't think it really shows it, but ultimately this does feel like the lighter shoe ultimately. And what that does, and slightly enables it a bit more, and it's not just that weight, is its ability to handle kind of faster paces. Now, that's kind of been my experience now. It's not just the weight, as I said, it's a little, it's a lot to do with the midsole as well that you're getting on the Superblast 2. It's got that kind of, midsole kind of influence from Asics's kind of faster kind of racing shoes. And obviously that's kind of countered by the kind of cushioning that we see in its kind of more kind of easy recovery style shoes. And the combination just works very nicely for when you want to run a little bit quicker. What I found is when I've run close to my kind of all out paces, just below that, try to do intervals, things like that, it's felt more comfortable to do it in the Superblast 2. Now, I think you can do some of that in the MagMax Nitro. I think for me, it's kind of easy, moderate, up-tempo paces. When you get beyond that, I think that weight does become a factor, and the midsole is very good for running a little bit quicker, and a bit like the Superblast 2, I think, it's doing a lot of the work for you, kind of rolling you through, in a relatively kind of quick fashion from heel to toe, and that's kind of what you want. Or if you want that in a max cushion super trainer, which is, helping you tick your legs over when maybe they're not feeling at their best, and these are shoes that can ultimately do that. And I think the MagMax Nitro does things slightly differently for me, but that doesn't mean it's no less effective as a training shoe. I still think it is a shoe that can work for similar types of runs. I just think when it comes to that kind of faster paces and using for faster paces, Superblast 2 feels more capable. And I talked about the outsoles as well here in terms of what they deliver in terms of the experience. And I think obviously from a traction and gripping point of view, Puma has, makes some of the best outsoles. It's a great one on the MagMax Nitro. And I think if that's something that you really kind of value in your shoe, then I think you're getting a little bit more in terms of that, kind of grip and traction overall. It's been fine for me in the Superblast 2, and I've run in kind of rainier conditions with both of them, but I think ultimately you're getting a little bit more from the Puma outsole. And I think ultimately what those, particularly on the Puma shoe, the outsole enables is to give it that kind of more stable, kind of controlled feel. And, that's coupled with a kind of wider, kind of roomier, kind of general design you're getting with the MagMax Nitro as well too. So for me, two kind of max cushion super trainers that I've really enjoyed running in. I definitely do think there are some key differences, but I do think they're very good options overall. Which one should you get and which one would I go for? I'll get into that in my verdict.
So my verdict between these two shoes, I would say that they're shoes that are designed for different purposes, and it's quite easy to decide which one you go for based on the type of runner that you are. If you're looking for a really nice all-rounder shoe that you really want to use for those faster sessions as well as the easier runs, Superblast 2 is a far superior shoe. It's definitely a shoe if you're a runner that skews more towards the faster training sessions, the longer distance training sessions. If you're training for a marathon or a half marathon, you're looking for a shoe that can do a lot of stuff, Superblast 2 is a far superior shoe to the MagMax Nitro. If you're looking for an easy shoe, and most of your runs are going to be easy, and you occasionally might be picking up the pace for a longer run or anything like that, I think the MagMax Nitro is better because it's just a bit more comfortable. It's got a little bit more injury return, a little bit more softness in that midsole foam, and just makes easier sessions just feel really, really nice and comfortable. But it's not great at picking up the pace, especially for those consistent faster sessions like I'm going to be doing tomorrow. I wouldn't pick up this shoe for that. So I think it really comes down to what sort of runs you're more likely to be doing. If you're training fast for a marathon or something, Superblast 2 is definitely the shoe to go for. If you focus more on an easy day shoe, which you just want to clock off the miles in, whether that's an easy 10k or whether that's a 25k, 30k, I think the MagMax Nitro is probably the best option for that, and it's a bit cheaper as well.
When it comes to the verdict, for me, the Asics Superblast 2 is a clear winner. It's it's a little bit more expensive than the Puma in both the UK and the US, but I think the Puma is also really expensive. And for the money with the Asics, you are getting a pretty special shoe. You are getting one that still stands out on the market. I don't really think another brand has really nailed this kind of high stack all rounder without a plate like Asics has. And the Superblast is an exceptional shoe. So you can kind of justify paying that exceptional price tag, or if not, you can look at other shoes. But the Puma MagMax, for me, just feels like, an easy day shoe. So it's got a bit of bounce there. I think it's probably aiming more at something like the Hoka Skyward X than the Asics Superblast. I don't think it's really going for versatility so much, but I just find the ride a bit too sluggish and not that enjoyable even at easy paces. So I think it is a shoe that will appeal to other people a lot more than me though. So there might well be some different opinions from Mike and Tom in this review. This is a shoe that I just didn't really find I could click with at all on the run. So yeah, I'd certainly pick the Asics Superblast out of these two, even at the extra cost.
So my take whether you should go for the Asics Superblast 2 or the Puma MagMax Nitro. Now the way I look at it is if you want the very best max cushion super trainer shoe, then absolutely go for the Superblast 2. It's the lighter of the shoe, it's the more agile of the two shoes as well. So if you want something that can handle faster paces, more up-tempo paces, then the Superblast 2 is going to give you that ultimately. Now the Puma MagMax Nitro is going to give you some of that ultimately. I don't think it's going to be the shoe that's going to hold up for those faster paces just because it's a slightly heavier shoe and it doesn't feel as aggressive at those kind of quicker paces, but it definitely can handle those kind of easy to moderate and up-tempo paces and does probably feel a little bit more comfortable at those recovery style runs compared to the Superblast 2. But ultimately, if it was me, I'd be going for this. But to say that this is cheaper, it will give you some of that experience of the Superblast 2 ultimately. And do it, I think, ultimately from a more accommodating shoe and one that has a, if you really care about durability, outsole grip, then those are things that kind of stand the Puma MagMax Nitro out from the Superblast 2. But if it was for me, I'd be going for this. Okay, so there you have it. That is our take on how the Puma MagMax Nitro compares to the Asics Superblast 2. Now, if you've got any questions about this video or either of these shoes, or there are other comparison videos you want to see with either the MagMax Nitro or the Superblast 2, do let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, see you for the next run test video.